Hello students, welcome back. Today's lecture is going to be on two topics. We're going to talk about social groups. So we've touched on that in taxonomy a little bit. So they were mentioned, things like solitary, multi-male, multi-female groups, but we're going to break those down a little bit more today and talk about them in a framework of ecology. We're also going to talk about communication and the varying forms of communication because obviously to be social, you need to be able to communicate. So today we're going to start, and just so you guys have a reference, there are some really great coloring and text to go along with this in your coloring book. So as I mentioned, I'm not going to give you guys specific assignments out of the book, but I do think it really helps you guys greatly to do those things that coincide. It helps to back up what I'm saying in lecture. One of the challenges with this class is that it is typically a lot of open discussion when we are together talking about these topics. And obviously now that we've moved online, we're missing some of that. Now we do have our discussion section, but the things that I pose to you in class, how I pull out more information, helping you guys make those connections, is a little bit lacking. So we do need to utilize our additional reading to fully understand this. Moving forward, our exams are going to be short answers, and they're going to be thoughtful answers. So you are not going to be able to Google and copy and paste. You're going to have to kind of really understand because it's much more about concepts and how they work together. So I do suggest doing the reading. It shouldn't be too difficult. Again, a page like this should only take you like less than 5 minutes to read through. The coloring assignments, again, the coloring book, you certainly can color. I think that's a fun added bonus, but the text is really great. So again, that's touching on the coloring book. So I do strongly suggest you guys do the supplemental reading if there is a topic that I'm talking about that you don't feel like you're quite making the connections on. I'm also going to apologize because my dishwasher is going, so hopefully that's not too distracting for you guys. Okay, so jumping in on social groups, we're going to start with the most basic group, and that's going to be our solitary animals. So if we recall back to our taxonomy, most of our solitary animals are going to be our Strepsirini, our prosimians, right? They're sort of the first primates in that tree or that lineage. And they're going to live in areas, all of our lemurs are going to live in Madagascar. We have some of our lorises in Asia. And for the most part, we call them solitary. Oops, you know what? I just realized that my battery is getting low, so I'm going to plug in really quick before that becomes a serious issue here. Okay. So they're going to be what we call solitary, but what you guys need to understand is when we say solitary, it doesn't mean that they're always alone. Typically, they're going to forage alone, which means they're going to go out looking for their food source. It could be insects at night like our eye. It could be leaves or fruit or something like that. Okay? So they're going to solitary forage. A mother is going to have her young with her, right? She's going to, during the times when she's not foraging, she's going to be taking care of her young. So a female in a solitary species is probably going to very rarely be alone. If any of you guys are moms, you know that you don't do very much alone. So when we talk about solitary, we're talking about solitary foraging. So it means that they typically have a food source that doesn't need to be defended, right? It's hard to defend a food source all on your own. So they're going to eat things that are going to be plentiful, or they're going to have an ecological niche that sets them apart in which they don't really have to compete, okay? So, and the other thing that our primates compete over is access to mating. So this means that we don't really need to compete with others. We're mostly talking about our males. So males don't typically need to compete with other males um, for access to females. So a lot of our Strepsirrhines still may breed seasonally, which means they might produce offspring more than once a year, or at least once a year. So we know as we go higher in our primate order, um, that becomes more difficult because you have like chimpanzees that may only mate every 3 to 6 years. So that's important. So one thing that we're going to talk about in this class a lot, and I'm going to drop it now because you're going to hear it over and over and over again, is a concept called fitness. Okay, so when we talk about fitness, we're not talking about going to the gym and getting fit. What we're talking about is genetic fitness. So an animal's only goal is to be as genetically fit as possible. So how do you do that? It's by spreading your genes. So the only way you spread your genes is through mating and having offspring. So our food sources are going to be really important, but our fitness, our genetic fitness is also going to be very important because my only goal is to spread as much of my genes as possible. Okay? So in this case, if we're talking about our food resources, they don't have to compete for food resources. And mating resources, there are multiple opportunities within a year or in a shorter period of time for females to reproduce. So males aren't as concerned with protecting the females because they'll potentially have multiple chances in a year to produce offspring or spread their genes. Okay, so again, every one of these is going to talk about ecological, which is our food, and mating. Okay, so let's see, what's our next group? Our next group would be monogamous pairs. Okay, so we do have some Strepsirrhines that are monogamous, but if we look at, say, let's think about our gibbons. Our gibbons form monogamous pairs. So they do have really large territories. They will defend their territories. So they do have a food source ecologically that's worth defending, again, because that's going to help sustain them. The biggest thing, though, in their case is that those males are defending their females, okay? So the male's genetic fitness is tied to their female. And so they form a monogamous pair. And in this case, parental care from the father is high. The reason it's high is because they have a relative assurance that the offspring is theirs genetically. Okay, so let's back up and talk about that again. In a monogamous pair, the male is fairly assured, now it's never a guarantee, but the probability that the offspring is his is very, very high. Okay, so it makes sense for him to invest his energy in the care of that infant because those are his genes. We see very rarely parental care from males in primate species. Only do we truly see it in our monogamous pair and our Polygenis. So again, male care is rare, but in this case, they're defending their territory from invaders, whether it be to steal their food or their mates. And again, they're investing in the care of those infants because they have a pretty high assurance that that's their genetic offspring. So those are monogamous pairs. Let's talk about polygynous. So we have our marmosets and tamarins that will form polygynous groups. So that is one female with two males. The reason that she has two males in this case is because if we remember, marmosets and tamarins often give birth to twins. They're very small little animals, and that requires a lot of energy from the female, okay? So those twins are sapping a lot of her energy. Sorry, I'm not sure if this paused or not. Okay. So I'm going to backtrack because my computer did something a little wacky, and I'm not sure if that translated into the video. So those twins are going to expend a lot of energy for her. They're And she's going to mate maybe potentially more than once a year. So that's a lot of investment from that female. So she needs protection. And the males in this case stay close because they want to increase their genetic fitness. They want to make sure their genetic material, their DNA in their offspring survives to adulthood. So what we'll typically see is a female with two males, and she'll mate with both of them. So when she has her offspring, those males are not sure which of the two is the actual paternal father, but the mating happens frequently enough that they are okay with investing or assisting in the support of those infants. So they will form a territory. We know based on their food source, they're not territorial over food very much because their food source is pretty abundant and they'll come together in large groups to feed. What they're really territorial over is their mating. So again, this is going to be based on access to mating and spreading those genes. So those males will assist in caring for those twins so that female has the energy and the capability to raise them to adulthood. What we'll also see in these groups a lot, and we'll talk more about this when we really dive deeper into mating strategy, is we'll often see juveniles. So offspring that are ready to move away from the nest, that are sexually mature, but they'll repress their reproduction for a short period of time and be helpers at the nest. So this is big brother and big sister basically staying behind to help at the nest. We'll hear about helpers at the nest a lot in mating strategies. They do this because if they stay behind and help raise a set of twins, their parents will often help them establish their own neighboring territory. So it's a strategy to assist so that you then get the support of your parents when you're establishing a territory. So those are our polygamous group or Polygenis groups. Then we have what's sometimes referred to as harems, but really more accurately would be referred to as one male, multi-female groups. And these can come about in a myriad of ways. So we have, let's see, baboons are kind of the easiest to talk about this with because they're one genus with multiple species. So something like our Hamadryas baboons, they will often form their groups very aggressively. So when a male becomes mature, so think about this. You have a group with one male and multiple females. As she's reproducing, she's going to have some male offspring. So as those male offspring become sexually mature, they're obviously going to leave the group. They're going to be pushed out of the group. So oftentimes you'll see bands or gangs of bachelor males roaming together until they can form their own harem. So you have one adult mating dominant male, his many females, potentially gangs of bachelor males roaming around. What those bachelor males' ultimate goal is, again, they want to be fit. They want to spread their genes. They're going to have to get females at some point. And they do so aggressively. They often kidnap young females from other groups. And they will aggressively hurt them, meaning they'll bite them, they'll abuse them to keep them in line and in their group. So the Hamadryas baboon, Hamadryas, sorry. So they'll do that sort of behavior and aggressively hurt those females. Then we have something in an opposite, like our Gelato Baboon. So Hamadryas are going to be on the savannas of Africa. They're going to roam in large bands to get to their food sources and things like that. Our Gelato Baboon, ecologically, is a little bit lazier. We call them our bleeding heart baboons, and I'll post a video about them because they're pretty cool. So they have sort of, and it looks like an upside down heart on their chest. It's a naked patch on their chest that's bright red. So we call them sometimes our Gelato Baboons, our bleeding heart baboons. They are also going to form one male, multi-female groups or harems, but they don't aggressively herd their females because their food source is on the ground. So they spend a lot of time sitting on their rear ends, like eating grasses and seeds and stuff off the ground. Um, so ecologically, their niche is a little bit different, and their food source is different. So they're not roaming about. They are typically pretty lazy. They're spending a lot of time on their rumps. So they're also really noisy because they're looking down a lot, so they're not visually cued. So their communication is a lot of chatter back and forth within the group. But in this case, the Gelato Baboon is not aggressive to his female. He's very doting. He's very careful. He spends a lot of time grooming and socializing and just showing a lot of care for his females because in a lot of ways the females are dominant. So the idea of dominance and submission is like a little weird in these situations because it might not fit with what you would normally think. So while the male is technically the alpha male over the whole group, the females really choose their male. So if they like their male, if their male is taking care of them, if he's challenged, the females support him in conflict. So they will back him up. So if he's challenged by an outside male, the females will come to his aid and support him in battle, if you will. If he's not a good male or he's getting too old to really care for the group, the females won't support him and he'll lose his position. So his status is really dictated by how popular he is with his females. So they carry a lot of sway. So again, just like, oh, hold on, let's just see. Okay. Sorry, my video is doing some weird things. So I don't know if it's happening to you where I'm getting paused or I just look like a crazy person. Anyways, so very much like our Hamadryas baboons, you're going to have one male, multiple females, typically gangs of juvenile males that haven't found their females yet will be roaming together until they're able to get their own group. We sometimes refer to our chimpanzees as solitary, but I think they really truly fit into a modified version. So I'm just going to grab that. I think I drew that for you guys before, so I'm just going to... I didn't, but I did draw this as home range and territory. What you should think of with orangs or orangutans is that we don't see them interacting socially a lot. They're not very social animals. So what you'll have typically is a large area in which a single male roams. And within that area, you'll see smaller home ranges or territories of females. So there's usually one male that's mating with a group of females. They just don't spend a lot of time socially interacting. So they're sort of a weird outlier, orangutans. They're sort of solitary. They're sort of one male, multi-female. So next we have our groups that consist of mixed genders, so multi-males and multi-females. I'm going to talk about the female dominant groups. So in primatology, we refer to that as female philopatric. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Female philopatric. Make a note. This would be a good time to write that down. Female philopatric means that our females are dominant, okay? The reason they are dominant is because they stay in their natal group for life, okay? I'm going to repeat that. Females stay in their natal group for life. So that means the group that they're born into is the group that they stay in for their entire lives, okay? And that's important, because they form the permanent social structure. So female philopatric groups have a permanent female social structure with a distinct hierarchy, okay? So we know which female is the alpha female and which female is the omega. So we know where all of our females lie in that social structure, and it's based on matrilines. So your alpha female and all of her daughters will be dominant over the next female in rank and all of her daughters, okay? Our males will leave their natal group when they become sexually mature. Why would they do that? Why would males need to leave a group when they become sexually mature? Because they want to avoid inbreeding. They don't want to breed with any of their female relatives. Again, we're talking about genetic fitness. If you inbreed, the genetic fitness or viability of your future offspring is decreased. So you don't want to do that. It's not a good idea. The reason we have these large groups is because they also ecologically have food sources that are worth defending. Fruit trees, nuts, things like that. So it makes sense for them to defend that territory, okay? And they need to do so with the help of their family. So again, ecological and genetic. So ecologically, they have a defendable resource. So it makes sense for them to come together in a group to do that, okay? So we're going to see this in like our capuchins, our macaques, chimpanzees, spider monkeys, squirrel monkeys, where they come together in large groups. Now, our capuchins and our macaques are all going to be female philopatric. Okay, so those females are going to form that permanent group. Males are going to leave their natal group. Okay, they're going to emigrate to a new group because those females are not related to them. They're going to emigrate every few years. So when their daughters or their potential daughters become mature, they're going to leave that group. So our females are going to form the permanent hierarchy. The new males are going to have their own hierarchy. There usually is an alpha male at the top. We'll talk more about this when we talk about dominance. And then the newer males, based on like when they entered the group, their tenure, kind of go from there. So again, female philopatric, the vast majority of our primates that live in large mixed gender groups are going to be female philopatric. We're going to talk about a lot of this. This is going to keep coming back in mating strategies, dominance hierarchies, maternal care. So again, I'm not going to dive much deeper into it than that. Finally, we have our fission fusion groups. I'm just pausing. Okay. Man, this video is not my friend today. So finally, we have our fission fusion groups. Again, large multi-male, multi-female groups. Spider monkeys and chimpanzees are going to have this sort of social structure. In this social structure, sorry, I lost a thought because I just remembered I forgot to talk about gorillas. So I'm going to go back to that after this. In this social structure, these are huge groups and they're male dominant. So that means males stay in their natal group for life, the group that they were born into. They will stay there for life. They will form their own hierarchies. Chimpanzees are very complex about how they form their dominance hierarchies. So we will dive much deeper into that. Females will emigrate or leave their natal group and join a new group, and then they will typically stay there for life. They will fission and fusion throughout the day. So, they'll come together in like the evening to nest together because there's security in large groups. They'll come together at certain points in the day to groom and things like that. But they'll forage throughout the day. So typically what you'll see in a foraging group is a mother and her juvenile offspring and infants foraging together. Sometimes when you see the adult males, they'll either be foraging together as a band of adult males, or sometimes they'll go with their moms because they always, even those adult males, always have a relationship to their mothers. So you'll see the group split off in different ways throughout the day and come back together. So that's a fission and fusion society, And again, the males are dominant in spider monkeys and chimpanzees. In our bonobos, same social structure except for our females are dominant. So it's a little bit more peaceful. Males, when they fight for dominance, it's not always in genetic lines. So they may pair up in different ways. It's a little less stable than our females. So the bonobos tend to be not as aggressive. They tend to be a little bit more peaceful. And they tend to solve skirmishes in a different way. We'll talk about that a little bit more. I forgot to mention gorillas, and I'm just going to backtrack to that really quickly because I do think it's important to know. So gorillas are also going to form those single males, multiple females. They will woo females from other groups as juveniles into theirs. They're not super aggressive in the way that they hurt their females. There's sort of an in-between between our Hamadryas and Gelata. They're pretty lazy for the most part. They're huge animals that only eat like bamboo and grasses and things like that and leaves, so they don't have a super rich diet. So they're not going to be territorial over their food source. They're territorial over their females. We have one silverback gorilla in every group. Our silverback gorilla is our only mating male. If he's got the silverback, he's the mating male. Just like our baboons, we might have groups of sexually mature juvenile males who roam together until they can have their own female group. They are going to have black backs. So we'll hear about blackback males. Those are males that are not sexually reproducing yet because they haven't found their female group. Within a group, oftentimes a male's juvenile sons will repress their mating. So they're old enough and mature enough to sexually reproduce, but they will repress that. So they will keep a black back and stay to support their father. And just like in our marmosets and tamarins, they do that because the potential of them getting parental support when they form their own territory is increased. So silverbacks are going to be the mating dominant male. Blackbacks are going to be males that are not reproducing yet. Okay? So I backtracked on that. All right. So those are social groups. I'm going to stop this video here and I'm going to start a new one for communication. So you have 2 videos this week, social structures and communication. Okay? So I'll see you guys in the next video.